Hello, welcome back to my sewing room. If you're new, welcome. My name is Robyn and I do sewing and crafting tutorials. Today I'm going to show you how I made this quick and easy little teething sensory toy for my granddaughter. I used the leftover scraps from making her baby blanket to make this. And hear that crinkle? Stay tuned to see how I made this. Okay, to get started, I'm going to start with an 8 by 8 inch square of flannel, or you could use cotton. And I cut the minky 10 inches by 10 inches. And you'll need to cut 12 pieces of ribbon 4 inches long. And then for the part that makes the crinkle noise inside, you're going to take an empty bag that holds your cereal. And this is one that I already washed and dried really well. And I turned it precisely like this. And this seam is in the back. And I wanted to be able to cut it without that seam. So I'm laying it sideways like this. And flatten it out. And now I'm going to cut an 8 by 8 inch square, 2 squares of this. And I have a rotary cutter that I use just for cutting paper and plastic and things like that, not fabric. So I'm going to use that. There, now I have 2 pieces of this. You could put 1 or you could put 2 depending on how crinkly and noisy you want yours. Okay, now we're going to take our flannel that's 8 by 8 and we're going to fold our ribbon the pretty side out, wrong sides together of the ribbon, and fold them in half. And these were cut, remember, 4 inches long. We're going to fold them in half and we're going to pin these. You just don't want to pin them in the corners. To show you how I'm lining up the ribbons, I'm going 1, 2, and put a dot right here, and then count over 2. 1, 2, and put a dot. 1, 2 inches, and put a dot, and then it's 1, 2 to the end. So they're spaced 2 inches apart, and I'm going to line up the ribbon centered. See the dot? And I'm going to put the dot in the center of the ribbon, and that's where I'm going to pin it right there, like that. And center the middle of the ribbon right on that dot. Okay, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all along the edge just to tack these ribbons on before we do the rest of this. Okay, let's head to the sewing machine. Okay, to get started, we're going to do a straight stitch, and I'm going to move my needle all the way to the right. It's already to the right, okay. Take out my needle, do a fixed stitch, and we're going to sew close to the edge. Stop, and the foot goes up, needle down. Gonna clip my threads before we sew to the end. Turn to the end, do a fixed stitch, we're done tacking these down. Clip our threads. Let's go back over to the cutting table. Okay, before we put the layers together, we need to keep these ribbons out of the way for when we sew this together. So I usually use painter's tape. But in a pinch, you could also use press and seal. But I always use, if I have enough of this, I'm going to use my painter's tape. And I just it's just to hold them out of the way so when we sew around the edges, these don't get caught. Yeah. I use painter's tape a lot when I'm sewing handles on a bag to hold them inside the bag, or anytime I have something like this that needs to be held down so it doesn't get caught in the sewing. It works great and it's easy for turning. So that's all tacked down. So now we're going to take our minky right sides up. We're going to take our flannel and we're going to place this right side down. So it's right sides together, right in the center of this minky. Just going to get it over a little bit from that because that's not a very pretty edge there. Make sure it's all pretty. And then I'm going to take one of these and place it on the back. And we're going to leave a space for turning. I'm going to leave about 3 inches. Now if you have a hard time sewing, you could use press and seal around the edges, but this is so small, I'm going to try just doing with my pins. So I'm not going to sew right here. Now I'm just going to pin this. There, it's pinned all the way around, except for right here, 3 inches is where we're going to leave this opening to turn it right side out. So let's head back over to the sewing machine. Okay, to get started, we're going to do a straight stitch. We're going to start right here, and I'm going to line up the flannel with the edge of my foot. And I'm going to move my needle to the center so I get about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Move that to the center. And we're going to do a fixed stitch, and we're going to do needle stop down. So we'll just start sewing. Oh, I forgot. We're going to do a 3.0 stitch length. 3.0 stitch length to be able to sew through the minky, and I have a 90-14 stretch needle. We got a fixed stitch, and we're going to sew straight. Take out this pin. Pivot and turn. Okay, we're coming to where we're going to stop. Just going to pull that out and sew right to there and do a fixed stitch. And we're done. Okay, we finished sewing, and now we're going to trim all around with some pinking shears. I'm going to trim the corners and then trim around the edge. Make sure you leave enough of this fabric to be able to turn this when we turn it right side out, to be able to tuck it in. So I usually cut that a little bit, leave a little bit more out for that side, so you have enough to tuck in when we turn it right side out. Okay, we got that trimmed, and now I'm going to go back over and I'm just going to do a little zigzag on the edge just for extra security. But make sure you don't zigzag here. I'm going to put some pins there to remind myself not to do a zigzag on this edge. Okay, I'm going to go and just do zigzag on the edge just for extra security so those ribbons stay tacked in. Okay, I just did a little zigzag all around the edge, but I made sure I did not zigzag here where I'm going to turn. So now we're going to turn our fabric right side. Poke out your little corners. There, now just remove the painter's tape. Okay, and I usually just use a chopstick to go in and poke out the corners. There, now we're just going to tuck in this little edge. There. That's all tucked in. Now we'll pin it closed and we'll go over to the sewing machine and we're going to do a top stitch all the way around. When we do that, it'll close up that hole for us. Okay, to do a top stitch, we're going to start here right where the opening is, so we can close that up. And I've got the fabric here right next to my foot, and I got my needle all the way to the right, and I'm going to do a 3.0 stitch length. Remove this and do a fixed stitch and just sew all the way around. Clip your threads before you finish sewing all the way around, so it doesn't create a nest. Meet up with your last stitch and do a fixed stitch, and we are done. We're all done. Look at how quick and easy that was. You can use up all your scraps to make some cute little baby toys. And if you like this, check out my playlist of quick and easy gifts to make. I think you'll really like it. Thanks for joining me today. Y'all have a so blessed day. Bye for now.